This podcast and content posted by Dr. Judith Joseph is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast or website is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional diagnoses or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Dr. Tiffany Moon may have been on The Real Housewives of Dallas, but don't let her Birkin bag and her stilettos fool you. She is a board-certified anesthesiology doctor, an entrepreneur, and a mother of twins. She moved from China at a young age to the U.S. and excelled academically, graduating from Ivy League Cornell University at the young age of 19. She is also a CEO of Aromasthesia Candle Company and 3 Moons Wine.
And then that's when Bravo came knocking on my door because my friend was on The Real Housewives of Dallas. So I just got introduced into that world. And they were like, hey, do you want to be a housewife? And I was like, sure, why not? That seems like a good way to solve my midlife crisis of feeling unfulfilled and not knowing where my place is in the world. I'll try reality TV.
No, it's so funny because your midlife is skewed from most people's midlife because you started life so soon, right?
Right.
Dr. Moon is currently leading the LeadHer Summit, which brings women leaders from all industries to one place to discuss how to manage work-life balance, how to become successful, and how to develop a sense of sisterhood.
I love this girl. I was like, she needs to come speak at my summit, but I don't even know her, and I'm gonna DM her and just, hi, you don't know me, but I love your content. I also am an immigrant with scarcity trauma as well as high functioning depression. And I would like to invite you to come speak in Dallas. And you're like, who is this chick?
Well, thank you so much for coming on my podcast, Into the Vault, today, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
We have so much in common. I used to be an anesthesiologist. You are an anesthesiologist. I do research. You do research. You're writing a book about how to cultivate joy in spite of being super busy and having to manage a lot of stress as a working mom, as a doctor. And we both have a history of scarcity trauma, and people don't know because when they look on the outside, they make their preconceptions, they judge, they have their ideas about what we are, who they think we are, but they don't know. So tell me about your upcoming book and how you juggle it all. How do you do all of the things that you do?
Yeah, the book is called Joy Prescriptions, and I describe it as half memoir and half self-help or personal development, because each of the chapters is like an actual chapter of my life about immigrating from China to the United States, growing up. My brother was born when I was 11 years old. I left my parents' house to go to college when I was 15, and all the different stages of my life. But at the conclusion of each chapter are some joy prescriptions that I offer to the reader because I gained some knowledge and wisdom through each chapter of my life. And it's how the reader can then take those lessons and apply it back in their own life.
And you are you're so exceptional. I mean, leaving your parents' home at 15 that's hardcore.
Yeah.
You can't just drop that line and not explain it.
Yeah, I was a super nerd. So I immigrated from China to the United States when I was 6 years old. My parents had come when I was 3, so I had not seen them for 3 years, and my grandparents were raising me. And then all of a sudden one day they put me on an airplane by myself to go meet my parents in America. So that was traumatic, to say the least. Like, they had to peel me off of my grandmother because she was my only friend. Like, I didn't know my mom and dad. They left me in China when I was 3. And so I got put on the plane, landed in America, did not know a lick of English, got put in first grade. And that was very traumatic. And I learned as a child that people are unsafe. They might try to be your friend one minute, but then not. I got made fun of, called all the names on the playground, the slanty eye thing. And so I found solace in books, and I found solace solace in learning because learning never betrayed me. And so I seriously loved reading. I did extra math worksheets and just was the quintessential nerd. And by the time I was 13, 14, almost 15, I was starting to exhaust the resources at my high school. And so my parents found out about this early college entrance program where you apply, take your SATs, just like you're applying to go to college, and you basically skip the last 2 years of high school and just start college. So I moved out of my parents' house when I was 15 years old, had a roommate, lived on a college campus, hung out with other normal college-aged kids. So I grew up real fast that year. But it was a really good decision for me because I don't think if I had stayed in that high school, that school would have had anything left to offer me.
Well, in my research on high functioning depression, looking specifically at immigrants and children of immigrants, I see this a lot, this dealing or not dealing with trauma by busying yourself, by burying your face in books, by accumulating all of the accolades and so forth and the achievements. And it's a coping mechanism, but at some point, people start to burn out. And a lot of the clients that I work with will say, we didn't talk about complaining about anything. We didn't talk about how we're feeling because we just felt grateful to be in this country. And had we voiced any negative or perceived negative complaints, then our family would say, well, what do you have to complain about? Like, you have everything. You have opportunities that people back home don't have. Stop complaining. You should feel lucky. And so a lot of people, similar to your background, will say, I don't even know what I like anymore. I've just been like going, doing. I have all these accomplishments, but am I truly feeling happy? So I love the idea of you sharing how you prescribe joy, because many of us have lost the ability to find joy in our lives.
Yes, that's
especially
true.
in healthcare, and you're in an operating room, so
Yeah.
you see a lot of intense people who focus and beeline towards certain careers, and then they wake up one day and they're like, why am I doing this?
No, I had that realization in my mid-30s that I was like, oh my gosh, I was mid-career. I had just been promoted from assistant to associate professor. I had twin toddlers at home. I was happily married. I was working full time. But then I just started to feel like, is this it? And it wasn't that I was unhappy or ungrateful, but I just looked around and was like, is this the pot of gold that was promised to me at the end of the rainbow? Because I basically was like one track mind, education is everything, academics, went to Cornell, graduated AOA, went to a top anesthesia residency. I feel like I did all the things. And then I arrived and looked around, and frankly, I was disappointed. And that was around 2019. And then that's when Bravo came knocking on my door because my friend was on the Real Housewives of Dallas. So I just got introduced into that world. And they were like, hey, do you want to be a housewife? And I was like, sure, why not? That seems like a good way to solve my midlife crisis of feeling unfulfilled and not knowing where my place is in the world. I'll try reality TV.
No, it's so funny because your midlife is skewed from most people's midlife because you started life so soon, right?
Right.
So like you not only rush through the childhood part, but you rush through the adult part, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience as a housewife, because most people have a lot of misconceptions or preconceived notions about what that show is about. But I have to tell you, every housewife that I've met, they're smart. They're not like, oh, I'm just a housewife. No, they're like entrepreneurs. They are moms. They run households. They're influential people. So tell us about that struggle, because I do a lot of content on duality and how in medicine, people expect you to look a certain way. And especially as a woman of color, there's more pressure on you to look a certain way, to act a certain way. So that duality can be draining, right? So how do you show up as your authentic self? How did you manage that inner conflict to do something as bold as to go on a Bravo show and be a real housewife and be all the other wonderful things that you are?
That is a really great question. I am one of those people that's all or nothing. This is why I have no hobbies, because if I picked up a hobby, I would hire a private coach, buy all the equipment, like just go all in. So prior to this midlife crisis, around the age of 36, 37, I was really afraid to show my authentic self because I thought I need to be prim and proper, buttoned up, because when I walk into the pre-op room of a patient who has cancer and say, I'm your anesthesiologist, I'll be taking care of you today, I already get a little like, you're our anesthesiologist? You seem young. Or I will do an entire preoperative evaluation going over all of the patient's past medical history, the intended anesthetic plan, risks and benefits, consent them, all that things. Then I get, do you know when the doctor's coming? And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. I am here. I just consented you and went over everything for 15, 20 minutes. And it's not the patient's fault, but it's demeaning. And my friend was saying that it's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? Because it's like not that bad. Why are you making such a big deal of it? But it happens over and over and over again. So I thought in order to counteract any of those preconceived notions, I need to be extremely prim and proper, always professional. The older white men at my institution that kind of make jokes and things like that, like I don't have that grace afforded to me. I don't have that luxury. But then when I hit this wall right before I joined Housewives, I was like, I am tired of trying to be perfect for everyone else all the time. I have a love for luxury items, handbags, shoes, skincare, makeup. And that love does not diminish my credibility as a physician at all. But I was afraid to show that side of myself because I thought, well, if this content gets into the wrong hands, they're gonna use it against me. And actually they did. They did at my work. But I just thought, F it. I'm gonna be who I'm gonna be, because when you don't have the full expression of yourself, when you dim your light because you're afraid of what other people might think or say or do, that is no way to live life. And so I just, yes, it's not good for your mental health. Exactly. And I was not in a great place around that time. And I just said, F it. I'm all in or all out. So I just started posting whatever I wanted on social media. I was doing TikTok dances with my kids and talking about makeup products. And I just bought these pair of shoes. So come unbox them with me. I just let it all out. And that was right around the time that Housewives happened. And there were repercussions for sure. I was called into my supervisor's office and basically told that some of my content was quote unquote unprofessional. And I just love when men who don't know anything about what we're talking about or what we're dealing with weaponize professionalism against us. So yeah, there was a few bumps in the road, if you will. It's not like I just decided to fully express myself and everyone accepted me with loving open arms. It wasn't like that, but I'm so glad that I did, because now who I am today, what I do, what I spend time on, the causes that are near and dear to my heart, I feel like I'm being the full expression of myself.
Well, listen, when I was in psychiatry training, they told me to invest in sweaters and flats. So you know what I did? I bought some more tight dresses and higher heels.
I love it.
Because it's important for us to show up, because the world looks like us. Patients look like us. They don't look like the majority of the leaders in healthcare, right? And if we buy into that, if we conform, then what are we doing for healthcare? What are we adding? What are we bringing to the table? And a lot of research is showing that women of color are going to the workplace and they're feeling like they're getting these trauma reactions, these trauma responses to these microaggressions, to these workplaces that are not overtly hostile, but they are undercover, sneaky hostile. Mm-hmm. They're telling you that you're not good enough, that you need to look a certain way. And they make you feel as if you can't be your authentic self. But I truly believe the only way to combat that is to show up as you are, to challenge their narrative. And by you doing what you're doing, you're not hurting anyone. you're not hurting anyone, but what you're doing is you're helping people to see that this is what a doctor looks like. And I don't know about you, but if I were you, I'd be like to the patient, oh, I graduated when I was 15. That's why I'm a genius. That's why I look so young.
That's why I look so young. I am so young. Don't let all this Botox fool you. Yeah. It really
a prodigy as a doctor.
Yeah, it's just like you say, it's not overt hostility, because then if it was like overt sexual harassment or somebody saying something straight to your face, you would go report that to HR in a heartbeat. But it's all these undercuts. You look so young, that's coming from patients. But a lot of my male colleagues have said things to me that I'm like, would you say that to me if I was a man? For sure not. And I think many professional women in medicine and in other fields have probably experienced similar things.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is not just an inconvenient truth. Like the direction of where the world is going, we're seeing that women's bodies, women's rights are being challenged. So we may be talking about things that people are like, oh, well, at least you're a doctor, at least you have these positions. But it's important. It's important that women are able to be themselves, that they are able to be in leadership positions, looking the way that they want to look, talking the way that they feel comfortable expressing themselves, showing that you don't have to be this ideal of a man's idea of what a woman leader, a woman doctor should look like. You're showing up as yourself. And this is important because of what the direction that the world is going in terms of our rights. We talk a lot about high functioning depression in healthcare. And after 2020, a lot of healthcare professionals are struggling. The CDC put out a report that healthcare professionals are reporting increased rates of harassment. I found that one interesting. Increased rates of burnout, not surprising. And also that they're not staying in their roles. And I don't know about you, but I talked to a lot of my colleagues and they're saying that there's turnover in their practices, in their hospitals. And as someone who's working in a hospital, who's around all types of healthcare professionals, what are some of the nuggets that you think healthcare providers, healthcare professionals should utilize so that they support their mental health? Because I know they love what they do. I know they love helping people and feeling challenged by the science and medicine. But at the same time, two things can be true. You can love what you do, but also be very stressed and overwhelmed by your role.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I have been an attending physician at a large teaching hospital going on my 13th year now, and it's hard. I say of all the things that I do, doing anesthesia is probably the easiest. That's not what stresses me out. I have sick patients, heart failure, liver failure that are coming in for transplants and all kinds of things. That's not what stresses me out. It's all the other BS. It's the administration that I feel is looking over my shoulder and getting fined on a chart because I forgot to fill out something. It's the paperwork. And I thankfully don't have to deal with this, but my friends in primary care say that they can't even practice medicine because their hands are tied because the insurance won't approve it, or there's a pre-authorization and somebody's denied what they've decided is appropriate or not appropriate for a patient's treatment and workup. And it's just ridiculous. And like you said, this is what I worry about truly. I know so many good doctors and they no longer practice medicine. It's not enough reward for the pain. And you have to think about these people went to medical school, residency, top of their class, accrued $250,000 worth of student loans. And now they're not even doing the thing that they went to all that school for. It's not the people, it's the system. The system is broken. And if the system continues to drive good doctors away from practicing medicine, who the hell is going to take care of us when we get old? Because I'm worried. I'm truly worried.
One of the statistics from JAMA recently showed that 1 in 10 medical students have thought about suicide. 1 in, I think, 4 interns have had suicidal ideation, and 1 in 13 practicing doctors thinks about suicidal ideation. And these are the healers. So the healers are unhealed. But in medical school, we don't learn that. At least when I was in training, we learned to focus on the patient. We learned the importance of bedside manner. We learned the importance of working as a team. but no one really teaches us how to take care of ourselves. And it's really important that we do that, because the data shows that doctors who are happier, who are less stressed, make less mistakes. So you're talking about like multiple millions of dollars that could be saved in terms of malpractice and medical errors, that it's worth it to invest in our happiness. It's worth it to prescribe joy to ourselves. Many of us prescribe other things to ourselves, but we need to learn how to live life, because what's the point of going to school for all these years, getting all these accolades, getting all these degrees? You can't take that with you to the grave. You just can't. So I think that looking at that mental health crisis within healthcare is important, because how can we truly help our patients if we're not helping ourselves? As a working mother, an entrepreneur, and a doctor, what's your secret to managing it all? Because you said earlier in this interview, you're like, oh, I don't have any hobbies, but I'm like, I don't know about that, because you have multiple businesses. So.
Yeah, every time I have a hobby, I end up turning it into a business. I enjoy wine tasting. I first learned about wine tasting when I was a senior at Cornell. There's this famous wine class in the hotel school at Cornell. And then I just started learning about it, and it's complicated, and I nerded out about learning about wine and the different varietals. And so my husband and I started a wine company when I was doing my residency in San Francisco, because we'd go up to Napa for the weekend. And then I like doing things that like result in a tangible product. So I got into candle making several years ago, and then I started making candles, and then I turned that into a business. So I guess I do have hobbies. They just end up being businesses and creating more work. I haven't figured out what business yet is buying Birkins. I guess I could open up a resale shop, like a luxury consignment shop, but I'm trying not to make any more businesses. I say that. And then the other day I turned to my assistant and I was like, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And she's like, you said to tell you that if you had any more ideas for businesses to tell you no. And I was like, okay. But I think to answer your question, any woman who has a household to maintain, children, their extracurriculars, a marriage, a career, you have to be able to set healthy boundaries around yourself. And I did not learn this until very recently, and sometimes I still struggle with it. But every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. A few years ago, I thought it would be a good idea to get on the speaking circuit and learn how to be a good public speaker. So I took this online course and I was pitching myself to different organizations, and I did it. But then I was like, wait a second, this takes me away from my children, because you usually have to travel to speak, and I would be gone for at least one night, sometimes two, and then I wouldn't see my kids those days. And I'm like, wait a second, that's not what I actually want. And I was like, oopsies. So I think I read something, I read these productivity and business books. I just consume them. They're all behind me. But they said, figure out what your big stones are. Pretend like you have a vase, and your big stones might be your career, your family, God, whatever your big stones are. And he said, put those in first. Then all the little pebbles go in after you fill your big stones. But if you fill your vase with the pebbles first, there's no space for the big stones. So I decided my big stones were my family, my marriage, and my career. That doesn't leave a lot of time for going to happy hour with my girlfriends. I say no more than I say yes most days, but I have set my priorities, and that's just how it is. I'm firm in my boundaries because I believe in them, and I want to create the space and time around myself to do the things I really want to do.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And it sounds like, oh, there are three things: family, marriage, career. But those are three really big things. And I know I used to be an anesthesiology resident, and it sounds, I don't think people understand how involved it is. They think that, okay, you're just putting people to sleep and then you wake them up. That sounds easy, but no. You are keeping them alive. Because if you imagine someone's cutting another human being, why aren't they dying? the anesthesiologist is keeping them alive, right? Because surgeons are cutting you. They're killing you, right? They're cutting you open.
And why are you waking up feeling fine after someone just cut into your, feeling great, actually. Yeah. We got the good drugs.
Yes.
It's
a difficult job. It's mentally challenging because you're doing math in your head constantly, trying to do these numbers to make sure the physiology makes sense, that the math is mathing, right? But then you're also, it's physically taxing, and you're petite. But I remember my back used to hurt a lot because we're in charge of the tube. We're in charge of the head. We got to make sure that tube does not fall out. So when the surgeons, and I say that with a plural because they have a team, usually it's just us on our own.
Yep.
When we're ready to lift that patient, we have the head. And heads are heavy. I learned that the hard way. When I was a resident, I was like, oh my goodness, this is heavy, right? And I was like, this is not for me. The OR is cold. Patients are heavy. I'm out. This is too early. I need to figure out what to do with my life. But it's a challenging field, and it is an important field. So that your career is very difficult, and anesthesiologists have some of the highest rates of depression and suicidality. So because it's so stressful.
And drug use.
It's life or death. Yes.
Yes.
Abuse.
Yep.
So, you have 3 very big stones that need to be carefully looked after. So I think that advice is spot on. I always ask my experts to tell me about a time in their life when on the outside, they looked golden. People were like, oh my gosh, I want to be just like you. How do you do it all? You look great. You make it look so easy. But then on the inside, you knew that you were struggling. And how did you get through that?
I think, that was coming out of COVID, having just exposed my entire life to the world to comment on, because I signed up to go on a reality TV show, and the people in the comments were just absolutely vicious. And I was in a dark time, I would say, in 2021, 2022. And I did not want to repeat the reality TV mistake again. And I told them, let me rest. I don't want to do another season. And I really wanted to focus on my family and my marriage, because I think that going on TV put a strain on my marriage and on my relationship with my kids. Because at the time I filmed for Housewives, I was working full time and filming. So basically, my stones became work and more work. Housewives, I had 2 full-time jobs, and I hardly spent any time with my husband or my children. And so for the year after that, it was just like a reinvestment in my relationships with the people that I love near and dear, because I came to this realization one day that I spend most of my effort and time out there in the world on people who probably don't care that much about me. And the person that I bring home to my family is a shell of the person that I want to be for them. And so why am I giving the greatest parts of myself away to other people and then bringing home to the people I love most, like cranky, tired, disheveled? Like, I'd open up a glass of wine at 6 p.m. and just start drinking because I just needed to. And I was drinking 2 glasses of wine probably every night for 6 months to a year. And then I was like, I don't think this is good. Is that alcoholism? I don't know. I never got in trouble. I never left the house. I never, did anything crazy, but it's not a good habit. And so in 2023, I was like, I am going to be responsible for my life. So I cut back on my drinking. I rejoined the gym. I hired a personal trainer. I reinvested in my relationships. And that's what brought me to like my current day self. But like 2021, 2022, back then, I probably wasn't the best version of myself.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I know you said you weren't taking on more hobbies, but you do have a summit coming up, and I'm going to be one of the speakers.
Yes.
And that sounds like a lot of work. And it also sounds fabulous. I mean, I was telling you that I was going to take you up on that, the makeup artists, because a lot of the speakers have and the attendees have the opportunity to hire a makeup artist to get headshots. And it's just brilliant because a lot of busy working women don't have time to take care of themselves, to update their websites. So if you can go to a conference and you're learning skills, you're connecting with other women, you are able to get glam, take a headshot and then go out glam. That's just brilliant. So tell us about your summit and what made you think of all the wonderful activities and the speakers and basically the goal for this summit.
Yeah, I dreamt up the summit in about February of this year. And I looked at the hotel and they said, we have one weekend in November that we are not booked. Every other weekend is booked for a corporate event or a wedding. And I said, when is it? They said November 8th through 10th. I said, great, I'll take it. Here's my credit card, charge the deposit. Then I started thinking, if I could create my own conference, what would it look like? So first of all, I thought it has to be fabulous. And I want it to be for professional women from all different backgrounds, not just doctors, because I have so many friends in finance, law, business that just have so much to teach each other. Because lately, this past year, I've been learning so much. I've been reading all these books, listening to podcasts. I love The Vault. I listened to Rachel Rodgers last night. I adore her, consumed her book, We Should All Be Millionaires, because I firmly believe that that is true. And I just started literally with a pen and a piece of paper, started writing down these all the thoughts. And I thought, I want speakers at the top of their game in every single field. So you talking about your research with high functioning depression and our trauma from our childhoods, that scarcity trauma that we all feel. And when I saw your first post about that, I said, oh my gosh, that's me. I didn't even know there was a term for it. But when you described it, I was like, yes, yes, yes. Then I started consuming more of your content. I have people coming to talk about negotiation, marketing, social media, legal pitfalls to avoid. If you have a side hustle or want to start a business, what are some things that you can preemptively do to set yourself up for success? Just all these different things. And I thought, if we all come together and listen to these amazing women, hear their stories of failure and triumph and all the hurdles that they've had to jump over, perhaps we can help each other and inspire one another and uplift each other so that we can all be better and up-level our lives. So I just started putting it together, and I was told by some people that you had the idea in February and you want the conference to happen in person in November. And they said, that's impossible. You should aim for 2025. And I said, nope, I'm doing it in 2024. We're going to make this happen. The speaker list was literally curated by me calling my girlfriends and saying, hey, so I have this idea that I'm going to plan my own women's leadership and empowerment conference, and you are a leader in XYZ. Would you be willing to come to Dallas on this date and speak to a room full of women about your area of expertise? And I thought to myself, probably half my girlfriends will say yes as a favor to me or to grow their portfolio and stuff. Almost every single woman I asked said yes, except those with scheduling difficulties. Somebody had a wedding that weekend and a family event. And I was just so overwhelmed with gratitude that my friends believed in me and believed in this idea that I put together to travel to Dallas and to come share their expertise. So I was overwhelmed with gratitude. And then we had to start doing logistics. And that was like the, oh shit, logistics part. It's a lot of planning. My friend was like, it's like you're planning a wedding. And I was like, no, girl, it's like a 3-day wedding with speakers that I have to fly in. And she goes, oh, so it's an Indian wedding. I was like, fine, whatever you want to call it. But it's been so fun. I've learned so much. It's really opened up my horizons. It's connected me to wonderful people like you. My friend Kum was the one who first sent me an Instagram reel of yours, I think with Mel Robbins, who I adore. And then I loved it. So then I started watching like all the squares of your Instagram. And I was like, I love this girl. I was like, she needs to come speak at my summit, but I don't even know her. And I'm going to DM her and just say what it is. So many people, especially young people these days, are afraid to ask or afraid to put yourselves out there because then you're labeled as a quote unquote try hard when you're not cool. But like when I reached out to you, I was like, hi, you don't know me, but I love your content. I also am an immigrant with scarcity trauma as well as high functioning depression. And I would like to invite you to come speak in Dallas. And you're like, who is this chick? So I'm glad that I didn't scare you and that we were actually able to meet and talk and bond and make a TikTok dancing, and that you're going to be coming to speak at the summit, because I think so many of the people who are coming are really going to benefit from everything you have to say, because I know I have.
No, I think it's brilliant. And I think people are learning that since 2020, we cannot do it on our own. Mm-mm. We need to learn from each other. We need to lean on each other. And we also need a break. I think I used to dread conferences. Now I'm like, oh, conferences are an opportunity to take a break.
Yes, yes.
And yours sounds so fabulous. And I'm like, I'm down.
Well, I said, if I'm asking these women to have their husband take care of the kids, hire a sitter, buy a plane ticket, book their hotel, I'm asking a lot of these women. I know that. And in return, I want to give you a lot. This is not some basic conference where it's like PowerPoint after PowerPoint and some piddly little breakout sessions. No, like I am planning a Tiffany Moon level conference. So the gold and platinum ticket holders, we do your hair, we do your makeup, you get professional headshots with my professional photographer that will be emailed to you after the event. We are feeding people 6 meals. Because when I first debuted the summit, I got a lot of, why is your summit $3,000 for normal people? Like we can't do that. And I said, I understand, I hear you, but we're not trying to make money. We are feeding you 6 meals, including alcohol, including a glam gala, including a swag bag. I'm flying all the speakers, and it's robust. And then people were like, oh, can I just Zoom in? I said, no, you may not. We are not having a Zoom component because I want your ass in the seat. I want you in the room. I tell people, I say, you have to put yourself in the room. People are like, what does that mean? There is a difference between being in the room and Zooming in. And half of this conference is like the networking and the connections that you're going to be making while you're there. And so if you're Zooming in, you're not going to get that, and your experience is not going to be robust. And that's not the experience that I crafted for the attendees. So I'm like, if you cannot carve out like 2.5 days to fly to Dallas this year, let's reevaluate your life. Let's see what's going on that you can't even take that time aside for yourself. And maybe let's make a change and aim for you to be here next year.
Well, it sounds so fabulous. Tell us where we could follow you, follow your conference, and keep up with all the wonderful things that you're doing.
I am at Tiffany Moon MD across all the platforms, and LeadHer Summit is LeadHer, which is a play on the word leader, but with a feminine proponent. And we are on Instagram and TikTok, as well as leadhersummit.com, which has the most up-to-date information about the agenda and the speakers.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure having you in the vault, and I can't wait to see you again in person.
I cannot wait to see you.